My son calls me daddy, but his real father works with my wife. Before we dive into this absolutely heart-wrenching story that will make you question everything you think you know about trust, family, and workplace relationships, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up right now. This is the kind of story that every married person needs to hear because it shows how the people closest to you, your spouse, and their coworkers, can be hiding secrets so devastating that they will completely destroy your understanding of your own family. Trust me, what I discovered about my wife's relationship with her coworker was so shocking that it didn't just end my marriage. It made me realize that the little boy who calls me daddy every day has been unknowingly living a lie his entire life. They say that trust is the foundation of marriage, and part of that trust involves believing that your spouse maintains appropriate boundaries with their coworkers and colleagues. We spend most of our waking hours at work, so it's natural for people to develop friendships and professional relationships with the people they see every day. But what happens when those workplace relationships cross lines that destroy families? What happens when you discover that your spouse's work friend is actually the biological father of the child you've been raising as your own? My name is Ryan, and until 2 months ago, I thought I was living the perfect life with my wife Lisa and our 4-year-old son Connor. I thought Lisa's close relationship with her coworker Tom was just a normal workplace friendship between two people who worked well together. I had no idea that when Lisa talked about Tom from work at our dinner table, she was talking about the man who was Connor's real father, and that both of them had been lying to me about the most fundamental truth about our family for over 4 years. I'm 29 years old, an electrician from Nashville, Tennessee, and I've been married to Lisa for 6 years. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, dated for 18 months, and got married in a small ceremony with our families and close friends. Lisa works as a physical therapist at a busy rehabilitation center, and she's always been passionate about helping people recover from injuries and regain their mobility. Connor was born when we had been married for 2 years, and from the moment he arrived, he became the center of our world. He was a healthy, happy baby who grew into an energetic toddler and is now a bright, curious 4-year-old who loves dinosaurs, building blocks, and playing soccer in our backyard. I've been completely devoted to Connor since the day he was born. I changed his diapers, got up with him during sleepless nights, taught him to ride his first bike, and have been there for every milestone in his young life. Connor is my pride and joy, and being his father has been the most rewarding experience of my life. Lisa has always talked about her coworkers frequently, which seemed normal since she spends so much time at the rehabilitation center and has developed close working relationships with the other therapists, doctors, and support staff there. One coworker that Lisa mentioned more often than others was Tom Rodriguez, a physical therapist who had joined the center about 6 months before Connor was born. According to Lisa, Tom was an excellent therapist who was great with patients and had become a good friend and colleague. Tom is so good with the elderly patients, Lisa would tell me over dinner. He has this way of motivating people to push through difficult exercises, and his success rate with recovery is really impressive. Lisa would often share stories about funny things that happened at work, difficult cases that she and Tom had collaborated on, and social events that the staff organized. Tom seemed to be involved in many of these stories, but I assumed that was normal since they worked closely together on patient care. Tom and I had this patient today who was so stubborn about doing his exercises, Lisa might say, or Tom came up with a really creative approach for helping this woman regain strength in her arm. I appreciated that Lisa had good working relationships with her colleagues, and Tom seemed like a dedicated professional who shared Lisa's commitment to helping patients achieve their rehabilitation goals. About a year after Connor was born, Lisa started attending more work-related social events, happy hours, birthday parties for coworkers, and holiday celebrations organized by the rehabilitation center. The whole physical therapy team is going out for drinks after work, Lisa would tell me. Tom organized it to celebrate our patient satisfaction scores this quarter. I was usually tired after long days doing electrical work and was happy to stay home with Connor while Lisa socialized with her colleagues. I thought it was healthy for her to have friendships and professional relationships outside of our marriage. Lisa would come home from these events with stories about her coworkers and updates on office gossip, and Tom was frequently mentioned as someone who was funny, social, and well-liked by the entire staff. Tom is hilarious, Lisa would say. He had everyone laughing tonight with his impressions of some of the doctors. I was glad that Lisa enjoyed her work environment and had developed friendships with people like Tom, who made her job more enjoyable. The first thing that made me slightly uncomfortable was when Lisa started receiving text messages from Tom outside of work hours, often late in the evenings or on weekends. Lisa's explanations seemed reasonable, but I was surprised by how frequently Tom needed to contact her outside of work hours for what appeared to be routine professional matters. The second thing that caught my attention was when Lisa started mentioning that she and Tom were working late together more frequently, often staying after hours to complete patient documentation or prepare for difficult cases. Tom and I need to stay late tonight to work on the treatment protocols for that new spinal injury patient, Lisa would tell me when she called to say she wouldn't be home for dinner. Tom wants to to review the progress notes for all our shared patients this week, so we're going to work through lunch and probably stay an hour or two after closing. Lisa's overtime work seemed legitimate, but I noticed that these late sessions almost always involved Tom specifically, rather than other coworkers or supervisors. The third red flag came when Connor started talking about Tom in ways that suggested he had met him and spent time with him, which seemed unusual for someone who was supposedly just Lisa's coworker. "Mommy's friend Tom is funny," Connor said one day while we were playing with his toys. "He makes silly voices when he reads me books." I was surprised to hear that Tom had been reading to Connor, since Lisa had never mentioned bringing Connor to her workplace or having coworkers interact with him. "When did Tom read you books?" I asked Connor. "When Mommy and Tom take me to the park sometimes," Connor replied innocently. This was the first I had heard about Lisa taking Connor to parks with Tom, and it seemed like an unusual activity for coworkers to do together. When I asked Lisa about Connor's comments that evening, she seemed uncomfortable and took a moment to respond. "Oh, that," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Sometimes when I have to work weekends, Tom helps me watch Connor if you're busy with work. He's really good with kids." Lisa's explanation was plausible, but she had never mentioned these weekend childcare arrangements before, and I was available most weekends to watch Connor myself. The fourth and most significant red flag came when I decided to surprise Lisa at work one Friday afternoon by bringing Connor to visit her and maybe take her out for an early dinner. Connor was excited about the idea of seeing where Mommy worked, and I thought it would be nice for Lisa's coworkers to meet the little boy she talked about so often. We arrived at the rehabilitation center around 4 p.m., and I told the receptionist that we were there to surprise Lisa Rodriguez in the physical therapy department. The receptionist directed us to the PT area, and we walked through the facility looking for Lisa's treatment rooms. When we found Lisa, she was in a private office with Tom, and they were sitting much closer together than seemed appropriate for coworkers reviewing patient files. Lisa and Tom both looked shocked and panicked when Connor and I walked into the room, and their reaction seemed far more intense than warranted for a surprise visit from family members. "Ryan," Lisa said, her voice sounding nervous and guilty, "what are you doing here?" "I thought we'd surprise you and maybe grab dinner," I replied, confused by her reaction. "Connor wanted to see where you work." Tom stood up quickly and seemed eager to leave the room, but Connor ran over to him with obvious familiarity. "Tom," Connor said excitedly, giving him a hug, "are you going to read me more books?" The interaction between Connor and Tom was clearly that of two people who knew each other well and had spent significant time together. Connor was completely comfortable with Tom, and Tom's response was natural and paternal. "Hey, buddy," Tom said to Connor, ruffling his hair in a gesture that seemed practiced and familiar. I watched this interaction with growing confusion and concern. Connor obviously had an established relationship with Tom that went far beyond the occasional childcare situation that Lisa had described. Lisa seemed anxious to get Connor and me out of her workplace, claiming that she was too busy to have dinner and needed to finish important work with Tom. "Maybe we can do dinner this weekend," she said, practically pushing us toward the exit. "Tom and I have a lot of patient documentation to complete before Monday." On the drive home, Connor talked excitedly about seeing Tom and asked when he could visit Mommy's work again. "I like Tom," Connor said. "He's funny and he plays with me a lot." Connor's comments made it clear that he had spent much more time with Tom than Lisa had ever told me about. That evening, I asked Lisa directly about the nature of her relationship with Tom and why Connor seemed so familiar with him. "Lisa," I said, "Connor obviously knows Tom much better than you've told me. What's really going on between you two?" Lisa became defensive and accused me of being jealous and suspicious for no reason. "Tom is just a good friend and coworker," she said angrily. "There's nothing inappropriate about our relationship. He helps me with Connor sometimes because he's a nice person." But Lisa's defensive reaction and her obvious discomfort during our visit to her workplace made me more suspicious rather than reassured. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to Lisa's behavior and began noticing more inconsistencies in her stories about work and her relationship with Tom. Lisa would claim to be working late, but when I called the rehabilitation center, the receptionist would tell me that most of the staff had left for the day. She would say she was going to work events with multiple coworkers, but her social media posts would show photos of just her and Tom together. Connor continued to make comments about activities he had done with Tom that Lisa had never mentioned to me. 1 month after the workplace visit, I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to hire a private investigator to find out what was really happening between Lisa and Tom. I contacted a local PI named Detective Sarah Mills and explained my concerns about my wife's relationship with her coworker and the inconsistencies I had noticed in her behavior. "What you're describing sounds like a potential affair," Detective Mills told me. "The secretive behavior, the defensive reactions, and the child's familiarity with this man are all red flags that suggest something inappropriate is happening." Detective Mills began surveillance of Lisa's activities, documenting where she went when she claimed to be working late and what she was really doing during her supposed overtime hours. The investigation revealed that Lisa and Tom were indeed having an affair, but the situation was much more complicated than a simple workplace romance. Detective Mills discovered that Lisa and Tom had been in a romantic relationship for over 4 years, dating back to when Connor was born. They were regularly spending time together outside of work, going on dates, and behaving like a couple rather than just co-workers and friends. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Detective Mills recommended that I consider having a paternity test done on Connor, given the timeline of Lisa's relationship with Tom and Connor's obvious comfort level with him. The timing of their relationship corresponds with your son's birth, Detective Mills explained, and the child's familiarity with this man suggests they may have a deeper connection than just friendship. I was initially resistant to the idea of a paternity test because Connor was my son in every way that mattered to me. But Detective Mills convinced me that I needed to know the truth about the situation before making any decisions about my marriage or Connor's future. I arranged for a discreet paternity test to be done, using DNA samples from Connor and myself. When the results came back 2 weeks later, they confirmed my worst fears. Connor was not my biological child. According to the DNA analysis, there was zero genetic relationship between Connor and me. The little boy who called me daddy and who I had loved and cared for since birth was not my son. If you're feeling as devastated as I was when I learned that Connor wasn't my biological child, you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because this story gets even more heartbreaking when I had to confront Lisa and Tom about their lies. What I discovered about how long they had been deceiving me and what they had been planning for Connor's future will make you realize that some people are capable of maintaining elaborate deceptions that destroy multiple lives. Ring that notification bell, because you won't believe how this family's secret affected everyone involved and what I decided to do about it. Armed with DNA evidence and documentation from the private investigator, I confronted Lisa about her relationship with Tom and Connor's true parentage. "Lisa," I said when she came home from work one evening, "we need to talk about Tom, Connor, and the lies you've been telling me for 4 years." Lisa immediately knew that her deception had been discovered, and she broke down crying. "How did you find out?" she asked, which confirmed my suspicions rather than denying them. "I hired a private investigator," I told her, "and I had a paternity test done. Connor isn't my son, is he?" Lisa admitted that Connor was Tom's biological child and that she had been lying to me about his paternity since before he was born. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she sobbed. "Tom and I started getting close at work, and it developed into something more than friendship. When I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't sure who the father was, but I hoped it was you." Lisa explained that as Connor grew older and started resembling Tom more than me, she became increasingly certain about his true parentage. "I had a paternity test done when Connor was 6 months old," she admitted. "When I found out Tom was his father, I didn't know how to tell you." Lisa claimed that she had maintained the deception because she wanted Connor to grow up with a stable family and didn't want to hurt me with the truth. "You love Connor so much," she said. "I didn't want to take that away from either of you." But Lisa's explanation raised obvious questions about Tom's knowledge of the situation and whether he had been participating in the deception. "Does Tom know Connor is his son?" I asked. Lisa admitted that Tom had known about Connor's paternity for over 3 years and had been wanting to play a more active role in his life. "Tom loves Connor," she said. "He's been asking me to tell you the truth so he can be Connor's father openly." This revelation made the situation even more painful. Not only had Lisa been lying to me about Connor's parentage, but Tom had been knowingly allowing me to raise his biological child while secretly developing a relationship with Connor behind my back. The three of us had been living a lie that only I was unaware of. When I asked Lisa what she and Tom had been planning for the future, she admitted that they had been discussing divorce and the possibility of Tom legally adopting Connor. "We've been talking about how to handle this situation," she said. "Tom wants to be Connor's legal father, and we've been trying to figure out how to make that transition without hurting you or Connor." Lisa and Tom had been planning to restructure Connor's entire life without consulting me or considering my feelings about losing the child I had raised as my own son. I told Lisa that our marriage was over and that I needed time to figure out how to handle the situation with Connor. The most difficult part of the entire situation was that Connor was completely innocent and had no understanding of the complex adult deceptions that had shaped his life. To Connor, I was his daddy. Tom was mommy's fun friend from work, and his family situation was normal and stable. He had no idea that his entire understanding of his family was based on lies. I struggled with whether to tell Connor the truth about his parentage or to allow Lisa and Tom to handle that conversation in their own way. On one hand, I felt that Connor deserved to know who his real father was and to have an honest relationship with Tom rather than the secretive friendship they had been maintaining. On the other hand, Connor was only 4 years old, and learning that I wasn't his real daddy might be confusing and upsetting for him. After much consideration and consultation with a family counselor, we decided that Connor should learn the truth about his parentage gradually and in age-appropriate ways. Connor was told that Tom was his biological father, but that I would always be his daddy too, since I was the one who had raised him and cared for him since birth. "You're very lucky," the counselor told Connor, "because you have 2 daddies who love you very much." Connor seemed to adapt to this explanation fairly well, though he occasionally occasionally ask questions about why he had lived with me instead of Tom, if Tom was his real daddy. Lisa and I divorced, and custody of Connor became complicated since I had no legal rights to him as his non-biological father. Tom wanted to establish legal paternity and assume full custody of Connor, but he also recognized that separating Connor from me completely would be traumatic for him. We worked out an arrangement where Connor would live primarily with Lisa and Tom, but I would continue to have regular visitation rights and remain involved in his life as his adoptive father figure. This arrangement has been difficult for everyone involved, but it prioritizes Connor's emotional well-being and allows him to maintain relationships with all the adults who love him. 6 months later, Connor is adjusting to his new family structure. He calls both Tom and me Daddy and seems comfortable with having two father figures in his life. Lisa and Tom are living together and building their relationship openly for the first time. Tom has legally established paternity and is taking an active role in Connor's upbringing. As for me, I've had to rebuild my understanding of fatherhood and family relationships. Connor will always be my son in my heart, regardless of our genetic connection, and I'm committed to remaining a positive influence in his life. I've learned painful lessons about trust, deception, and the importance of honesty in all relationships. Lisa claimed that she maintained the lie about Connor's paternity to protect our family and avoid hurting me, but her deception ultimately caused much more pain than the truth would have caused if she had been honest from the beginning. Tom had a right to know about his son from birth. Connor deserved to know his real father, and I deserve to make informed decisions about my family relationships based on accurate information. The workplace affair between Lisa and Tom wasn't just about infidelity. It created a complex web of lies that affected Connor's entire understanding of his family and identity. Sometimes people ask me if I regret finding out the truth about Connor's paternity, since it led to the end of my marriage and a dramatic change in my relationship with the child I had considered my son. The answer is no. Connor deserved to have an honest relationship with his biological father, and living based on lies was not sustainable for any of us. Tom is a good man and a loving father to Connor. While I wish the situation had been handled honestly from the beginning, I'm glad that Connor now has the opportunity to know and bond with his real dad. I still love Connor as much as I ever did, and I always will. The 4 years I spent as his father were real and meaningful, and that bond doesn't disappear because of genetics. But I also learned that relationships built on deception will eventually collapse under the weight of their own lies. Lisa and Tom's decision to maintain their affair secretly while allowing me to raise Connor created a situation where everyone was living based on false information. When the truth finally came out, it was more devastating than it would have been if they had been honest from the beginning. Connor is thriving with his new family arrangement, and he's building strong relationships with both Tom and me. He's too young to fully understand all the complexities of his situation, but he knows that he's surrounded by adults who love him and are committed to his happiness. The deception that shaped the first 4 years of Connor's life has been replaced with honesty and openness that will serve him much better as he grows up. And while it was painful to learn the truth about my family, it allowed all of us to build relationships based on reality rather than lies. That's a foundation that will benefit Connor for the rest of his life, even if it meant disrupting the false stability that Lisa thought she was protecting.